Welcome into the Men Are Forged podcast. This is your host, Cartwright Morris. If this is your first time listening to Men Are Forged, go to menareforged.com to find out more information about how we are forging men through life and leadership development. This is the podcast for men who are looking to understand how to grow, how to face challenges, how to do hard things through hearing about other men who have gone before them. So check out menareforged.com to find out more about how I can help you become a high-performing leader. Now, today's episode. All right, welcome in the Men Are Forged podcast. It's a new year, kind of new focus on how as men can we encourage one another to embrace discomfort in life and what that leads to. And I thought this was a great guest, a guy I found on Instagram, Merrill from Utah. Mike, it's great to have you in here, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and great to finally meet you more virtually, but kind of in person, Cartwright.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of these days, right? The virtual is in person.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I love meeting people virtually because it's a great way to get to know a community that you otherwise never would have connected with.
Yeah, it absolutely just shrinks the world. It really does. So, Mike, because I found you on Instagram, I'm kind of curious. I'm excited to get in our discussion because of what you as a family man, a man of values, an entrepreneur, a business owner. I'm looking forward to kind of hearing more of your career and your decisions. But I know you're an elk hunter, but elk hunting isn't until the fall. So, how do you, and in elk hunting, this little study I've done, it's prep. You got to be ready for it. You can't disrespect that. What is it? Cam Hanes said you can't disrespect the animal.
That's right.
So what do you do in the off season to prepare for the fall?
Yeah. I appreciate that. Shout out. I do love elk hunting a lot. It's become, I like all types of hunting, especially big game, but really drawn to archery and bow hunting. Mm-hmm. And there's just something about the majesty and how incredible elk are as creatures. Just fascinating. So it's definitely a passion, and it has become a year-round pursuit for me. And and just like you said, the training and the prep and the being in shape and taking, e-courses and e-scouting and listening to podcasts while I run, while I work out, so that I'm working on my, the muscle between my ears at the same time as I'm, working on the muscles on my body to help me have greater endurance and tenacity and grit for those high mountains, right?
Yeah, gosh. In Utah, what beautiful country. Oh, man. Do you do most of your hunting actually in Utah?
I wouldn't say most. No, it's, probably actually not most because, I try and hunt somewhere out of state or a couple states every year also, when I can draw the tags or have opportunities, just depending on the schedule. I'm a part owner of a software and technology company for construction. So we have a trade show season, and then we also have trade shows sprinkled throughout the year. So obviously the busyness of my schedule at work can sometimes impact my ability to get out into the elk woods and chasing other things like mule deer and bears and whatever else. So, but I like to get out whenever I can.
And that's what I was going to ask you what other big game are you black bears?
I've got a black bear with my bow this last year. Here in Utah. That was awesome. And also antelope, mule deer, other big game of all sorts. I should draw a moose tag here in Utah here shortly, but it's unique and different experience no matter what you're chasing, but similar in a preparation standpoint and, being familiar with your equipment and accurate with my bow. And I do rifle hunt a little bit, but I try an archery hunt whenever I have the opportunity.
Yeah. I'm kind of geeking out a little bit of this, Mike, because I just think it's fascinating as a bow hunter, because it's like most people don't know the difference is you have to be so much closer to the animal, but also you have to be good at the skill. And learning how to, so I just think that's just a fascinating, with elk, calling them in, they're just being in their space. I just think that's just such a fascinating world to be in beyond, because as an Alabama guy, I grew up just hunting sitting in a tree stand and shooting them with a gun. So
sure. Yeah. It's funny because they talk about, like with elk, they'll say, you got to get in their bedroom, their bedding area where they sleep.
Mhm.
And that's that, or transition to or from is mostly where a lot of people have opportunities on animals, first light and last light of the day, or maybe when they get up to move around a little bit and get a new bed in the middle of the day. So getting yourself, it's a lot like life and business. I mean, getting yourself in position and preparing, and in hunting, it's the wind you've got to watch, first and foremost. And then, they say, if they see you or they hear you, you might be able to get away with a little bit of it. But if they smell you, then you're done. It's over, right? So kind of like competition.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I think I want to say I watched an episode of Meat Eater on Netflix, and them saying you can fool them with their eyes, their ears, but you can't fool them with the nose. Yeah,
that's right. That's for sure.
Mike, I'd love just to dive into, how you got into business. 'Cause I know you got into entrepreneurship at a young age. I think you started a construction company, and I just would love to, what about your upbringing that encouraged that thought process? Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So, my father, from the time I was little, only ever owned his own business. I mean, he sold life insurance and was in investments and things like that. But, and he passed away from a heart attack when I was only 13. And so he was pretty young. He was only 45. And, I'm 50. Well, I'll be 50 this year. So I've outlived what he did. But what even as a young man, he would always use phrases like, mind over matter, or he would do different things to motivate us and give us a reward for doing something difficult, like, doing 100 push-ups, or, he'd get us up as young kids in front of his whole sales team, sometimes over 100, grown men and women that we would go up and get in front of and do 100 sit-ups in a minute, or just something to show, if we got a soda pop for a reward or $1. I mean, just something maybe really small and minuscule, that was still motivating. And despite your size or maybe you're more street smart than book smart, whatever your skill really is, with hard work and grit and determination, you can overcome obstacles that would be seemingly insurmountable. So I learned that at a very young age, even though he died when I was very young. So that's just been something that stuck with me and helped lead me down a path that made me want to take control of my own life and not necessarily have to depend on everybody else to provide for me and for my family.
Man, that's great. So what were some of your early businesses that really got going, and what were some of the struggles that you had going through them?
Today's episode is brought to you by Thrive Marriage Lab. If you want your marriage to thrive, this is a great opportunity to you. The strong marriages are the bedrock of strong churches, organization, families, and community. This is a 12-month pathway for any of you that are looking to really have weekly engagement with experienced marriage counselors. Not just one, but many. So go to restory.life/thrive to get on the waiting list for this great program that starts in April. That's restory.life/thrive. And make sure you put the word Forge in the promo code to receive a discount on your monthly fee. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting because, I always had a goal to build my own home. I didn't know how I was going to be able to do that. I mean, I had uncles, my mom's brothers, that were pretty handy when I was a contractor. And I mean, I was around it a little bit, just enough to see it, but I really didn't. I didn't know anything about, swinging a hammer or nail guns or a compressor. I mean, I just had no knowledge of that. But when I was in high school, the girl that I was dating, who is now my wife, actually my high school sweetheart, her father was a contractor, and he used to, bug me every time I'd come on. Hey, why don't you come work on one of my framing crews? And eventually I did. And man, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the hard work and feeling like you really accomplished something at the end of the day. And just the process, it just spoke to me. And I realized then, like, oh, okay, I could actually learn how to do this, even though I have had no background in it whatsoever. I love playing baseball and golf and sports and was more into that scene, baseball cards and things that were completely different than, I even loved technology and computers, but completely the opposite of manual labor construction. So.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. I think as somebody who, my job as a coach is, so I don't necessarily see the fruits of my labor, but sometimes it's like in my mind doing hard labor, seeing the work. And for you, just, like getting in construction, how much was the joy connected to the hard part?
Yeah, that's a great observation. Man, it's woven into that same fabric. I mean, you can't separate it at all without picking out one thread at a time. And I think that has become true and synonymous with the rest of my life also. I mean, I feel like, I'll often say, if I don't really want to do something for 5 years, I try not to do it for 5 minutes. And so I just don't. I'm almost 50. I mean, I've just learned, and I wish I would have learned younger, things like, I love golfing. I absolutely love it. And every time I go, I'm like, gosh, I got to do this more. Why am I not?
Right. Yeah.
And I literally haven't been in like 3 years. I have a new driver that I got 5 years ago for Christmas. I've used it like 5 times.
Oh, man.
But it's just because I have other passions that, if I'm being completely honest, 8 out of 10 times, I would rather go for a beautiful trail run up on a high mountain trail than go golf. And not that even one costs money or not, or I just get a different level of fulfillment. And kind of like your earlier question, that is actually what drives and prepares me for that hunting in the fall and being a better elk hunter. And so being a better elk hunter helps me provide for my family, and not just, I can go to Walmart like anybody and go buy a steak or a roast or ground beef or whatever. But man, if you have the opportunity to go from the sweat of your brow and on your back, pack out the nutritious, lean, pure protein from an animal that you pursued, and hopefully with your bow, and you got in very close and personal and really almost a spiritual experience. It's something just so different than going down, the meat section at Walmart. So so that fulfillment is so enriching, and it really brings more of a joy and a passion than just happiness, like hitting a great golf shot. It's just completely different.
Yeah. Because how much work you had to put into it. I mean, a lot of times golf, we just kind of pop out of the cart and slap one on the green, right?
Yeah. And years ago, gosh, when I was a contractor, I'm not a general contractor anymore. I run a software company that does software for construction, which is also kind of an interesting backstory.
I was going to get there.
Okay. But anyway, there was one season where, I was golfing enough. I'm like, I just ought to buy a season pass. So I did. And we would knock off about 3 or 4 o'clock every afternoon and go hit 9 holes at least. And I got really, a lot better at golf, and it was pretty cool. And for, a few weeks, it was awesome. But after about a month of doing that, honestly, it was more like a hassle. Like, oh man, I felt like I was missing out on other things I needed to do. I had other priorities. It just didn't align for me that I, needed golf this much. And so, I understand what people say, like that are in professional sports or other things where their passion and their hobby becomes their job. And then it becomes something different. So not that nobody was paying me to golf. I just felt the pressure because I had a pass and just kind of was in the habit. So it felt like it was something I needed to try and do to get my value and money out of the pass. But I learned after that, and I haven't bought a season pass since then, because I thought, well, I'll just pay when I really want to go, if I want to go.
Yeah, that's good. So, Mike, I'd love to get just your insight on being a young entrepreneur, being a young guy in business, in your 20s. How hard was it? Because I know there's just a lot of young guys that, they feel the tension of being consistent with their values in the midst of pursuit and making money and even providing for their family. How did you hold on to your values in the midst of trying to be more successful and make more money and all that?
Yeah, that was tough. And it's a balance too. I mean, you hear people
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, it's just business, or, or they have two sets of ethics and values, and that
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't fly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing it in business, then that's who you are.
Yeah.
You don't get to choose, oh, I'm going to throw this hat on today and this hat on tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You're the same person. It's the same soul. It's the same, it's the same name. That's your family name. And
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
how you act or react to situations, sometimes out of your control, that are unfortunate, or maybe they're in your control, but you're young and you're prone to making mistakes because you just don't know any better. And so having grace with yourself and realizing that, it's not how you, it's not necessarily how you perform or whether you win or you lose or you fail or you succeed. It's more back to, getting up and dusting yourself off when you get knocked off that horse, and recognizing those lessons that you can learn from that, and then moving on better, so that you're not. And the people say, you win or you lose, or you win or you fail, or you succeed or you fail. I think, and you hear this phrase thrown around, sometimes even loosely, but it's like we either win or we learn.
Yeah.
You don't fail. It's not over, right?
Right.
You might have to stick another quarter in the machine, but
Yeah.
I'm aging myself there with the old video games.
I got the reference, Mike. So
yeah, so you may have to throw some more money in to keep the thing rolling, but at the same time, hopefully you can actually learn from your successes and figure out why it went right, why it went well. And that's the same in hunting. I mean, yeah, you learn way more from your mistakes, but man, if you really put all that year-round work and effort into it, and you're really passionate about it, you're just not willing to make those same mistakes twice as much as you can help it. And so that you got to just, pound that in your head and realize that, I'm going to take not the path of least resistance. I'm going to take the better path. And a lot of times that lonely path, where, there's a book called The Dip, that's just a fantastic book. And it basically talks about that dip that you all have to go through to get to something better.
Yeah.
And as you get through that dip and start to get up into the steep, you recognize that, oh, wow, there's a lot less people here because they've all quit and decided to do something else because it got too hard for them. So if you can grit through that dip, man, you can get to the sunny side of the hill where very few people actually make it.
Yeah. And I mean, what would you say that allowed you to stay in that upswing? What mindset, what part of your life that really kind of ingrained where, man, it's going to, like, I got to keep going the same way I'm going?
Well, I mean, back to another analogy. I mean, I started running, and gosh, I was 42, I think, when I really, I've always been into fitness and working out and hitting the gym, but I hated running, couldn't stand it. And my wife's been a lifelong runner, almost 30 years. She's run very consistently. And if I was chasing a ball or a guy with a ball, or if I had a guy chasing me, with a ball, I was really pretty good at that stuff. But that was my competitive drive. But I hated running for the sake of running. And so, but it was through hunting and, getting tired at chasing a buck or going through that experience that I finally realized my fitness level is now at a place where I'm not enjoying this fulfillment like I normally would. And even though I love doing this right now, this freaking sucks. Yeah. And so, I can't put myself through this again another season. And so I started running, set a real, I felt like it was an attainable, but a stretch goal. Hey, this net, by what I said is the first year I'm going to start running in 2015, and I'm going to hit 250 miles by Easter. That was my goal. So basically, it was the beginning of April, so 3 months. And I hit that. I hit like 256 miles or something. Yes. I scaled it properly, and just decided, even if I have to slow down and walk sometimes up a hill, or like, I got to be okay with that. And so that's another thing that your listeners can take away is, give yourself grace you're not being lazy, but you're allowing yourself to really commit to the goal and to what it is you're trying to accomplish. And you're looking more long-term. I mean, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so you've got to, give yourself enough grace to not cop out and not just walk when you don't need to walk, but allow yourself to get up to speed, allow yourself to build up that resistance, allow yourself to have that mental fortitude before you fully commit. Because if you keep stretching these goals too high and you just can't reach them, then you're going to just feel like a failure all the time. And you'll actually probably have a tendency to just quit starting, quit trying, quit reaching. And so that 250 let me get to where I was like, oh man, okay, now I've become this runner through this process where before I hated it. And now I actually love it and I look forward to it and I can't wait to do it. And so then I extended that goal and said, well, a quarter of the year, 250 miles. Well, I'm going to have a goal to hit 1,000 by the end of the year. And so I ended up doing that. And it was, again, because I allowed myself enough latitude and grace to get there, not just physically. My body could certainly do it. It was my mind. And that's usually the case with us as humans. Yeah. Our mind is the problem. That's the weak spot. Our body can do so much more. Than David Goggins says, even when you think you're ready to quit and you can't go another step, you're really only 40% of your physical capacity. So,
so true. I mean, I think that anybody should have an experience physically where they're exhausted and have to keep going. I mean, I did an adventure run where we were mountain biking, running, and canoeing, and it was just like you got the end, and I was exhausted, but I was like, I had so much more capacity than I thought I could, and it just like forcing yourself to do stuff like that. It then takes in the next thing. It's like, what's blocked here? Because clearly it's not here.
It's like you're hiking, and I had an experience like this. My father-in-law had a mountain goat tag quite a few years ago. Drew the state gives away, it's called a sportsman's permit. They only give one a year, and you have like 4 months to hunt, and you can hunt any goat in the state, anywhere, any unit. And so, I mean, you really could take a mature animal and you're hunting when nobody else is hunting, and you can use any weapon you want, and just a really cool opportunity. And so I think there were 1,105 people or something that put in for this, and he drew it. And so we went these different places, and mountain goats, they don't live in flat ground. I mean, they're not out in Iowa in a cornfield, they're in the steepest, nastiest, craziest country that, where it's like 200, 300, 400 foot cliffs and ice everywhere you look. Pretty crazy. So we were looking for this mountain goat herd in this unit. It's called the Beaver Unit and Beaver Mountain. So we hiking, and we left before the sun came up, and we weren't to the highest peak of the highest peak until about 1 p.m. I mean, we hiked. It was probably 8-9 hours of actual hiking to get to where we were, where the goats were. And so, but every time we got over that, I'm like, oh, okay, I think this next mountain. This is before Onyx and all these mapping software where you really had paper maps. So we had no idea. We just kept going, and figured when we get to the top, that's where the goats will be. And sure enough, we got to the top, and there they were, and it was worth every step to get there. It was incredible, unique experience that, 15, 20 years ago, and I still remember like it was yesterday. So it's like that in life, where until you get to that next peak, you don't realize that there's another peak. And once you get there and you're more than halfway, you're like, okay, well, I got this far. I can keep going the rest and find the motivation in the tank to get there. So. Yeah,
that's awesome. Man, hunting stories in itself, right? They just, I love it, man. So yeah, Mike, I love to get to the part where, okay, you're in construction. I think you even did some real estate. And what got you into software? Well, I'd love to hear that transition.
Yeah. So this is also super interesting. So I had a very young age, I was running a fairly successful construction company. We were growing. Pretty soon I got realtors and I'd model homes, and got to a point where I was building 30 to 40 homes at a time.
Wow.
Almost 100 in a year. And it was crazy. I didn't have any partners, it was just me. And they were selling homes super fast. And we got to a point where there was, actually was in 2001, we had the Iraq war going on, and we had, the United States was helping rebuild Iraq. And so we were sending a lot of our materials and resources over there to rebuild. Well, that spiked the cost of our materials here, I mean, immensely. In about a 3-month period, like a sheet of plywood I was
Wow.
paying about $5.50 for, and they went to $32 in about 90 days. And so
Wow.
the challenge and the problem was I had all these pre-sold homes. I had like 38 contracts that I had to honor the price of. And so even though I was running I think I had about 24 million in revenue that last year, but the spike in that and trying to provide all those things and eat and absorb all those costs, because I didn't have contracts that allowed me to force people to sign a change order for material increases. I just didn't. Again, this is, I was young. I was like, late 20s, early 30s. I didn't know any different. I got realtors that are professionals that are helping me, and and they were just using the contracts that the state had for this. They came out with a new construction contract for realtors to use, but it just didn't have all the provisions that we have today for protection of those types of things. So my business became a victim of that, and I lost about $300,000 in cash in about 90 days, and just was really a rough go. And finally I ended up having to shut the company down. I just could not keep absorbing those costs and going through that. So I transitioned from that to, I knew construction, building, real estate business. I had all of those things, in all those arrows in my quiver. So I transitioned to that. And then it was in that process that a good friend of mine who had worked for me, and we'd done projects together, and he's our CEO of the company that I'm a partner in. His name's Ryan Remkus. And he had this idea, because we had framers and crews, and our guys were, turning in time cards that were on paper. And, he kept saying, God, there's just got to be a better way to track this stuff. So his best friend since kindergarten was a programmer. And so they got talking, could we build something that's like a little time clock? And so we started talking about that and thinking, man, if you had something that was mobile and remote and could go out to the job sites, not like the punch clock at the factory, but actually mobile and remote. And so, they found another guy that was really good at mobile development. If you can even imagine, it was on the old Nokia flip phones back then, because that's all they had. And we wrote software for a Palm Pilot. So the Palm Pilot became a mobile clock. And then we partnered with OtterBox, who at the time was a teeny little company out of Colorado. And we were their largest client for years. And we would put an OtterBox around every Palm Pilot and then sell that with our software to contractors to have a mobile time tracking system. So we started that. It's called About Time Technologies. We started that in 2003, and we've been going almost 20 years now. And now we have a cloud product called WorkMax, and that's the mobile workforce podcast sign in my background. That's a podcast that I host for our business to talk about entrepreneurship and businesses being better, and culture, and how to recruit and retain talent, and just things that challenges that contractors face, and how to overcome those is something that we talk about, every week on our show. So long story to get to here, but essentially learned construction, learned that world, learned the problems, the challenges, experienced those very firsthand, and then reinvented my knowledge and reapplied it to something completely different on the other side of the same spectrum of construction, to say, how do I help other contractors be better and not have these pitfalls and challenges and surprises financially that are catastrophic for their business?
Yeah. I just love that, Mike, because I love the quote, you're best positioned to serve the person you used to be. And I feel like that's what you just did, man. You just served that guy that you used to be. So, I appreciate you giving a plug for your podcast, the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I love that, man. And it's just business in all areas. That's really good. So yeah, Mike, I love to kind of ask, and you've kind of hit on this already, but what would you tell your 25-year-old self if you could sit him down right now?
Well, it's funny, because I have a son that's 25, and he, I took him trail running with me one time, and he's way into, he's in better shape than I am. He's ripped and fit, and, still young and spunky and all the things. But, you want to make a 25-year-old, young man cry. You take him up on a mountain trail and, have him try and keep up with you if you've been doing it a while. And so he's like, why are you doing this? Like, what are we doing? We're like the only ones up here. Why are you running up this? Why are you hiking? Why are you doing this? And so I got to explain that to him. And I just told him, my younger self, that was the other thing. I was so just super, super analytical and very good at avoiding the suck, avoiding pain. Yeah. And even our business today, it helps companies avoid that pain. But on the opposite side of that, I have learned that if I can lean into the hard, if it's raining and snowing, it's honestly, this isn't cliche, this isn't made up. That's when I want to run outside.
Yeah.
I grew up the opposite. I was the kid that would figure out 15 ways to get out of the work before I would put the work in. And so I just had to use that same brain and flip it on its head and say, what if I did do that hard thing? What if I actually learned to enjoy it?
Yeah.
And the reason is, it's so true. If my most difficult, challenging times are when I'm choosing to do it, when in my free time, like when I had a buddy reposted a post I did the other day. I was running on this snowy trail, and he posted something and said, this guy's out here doing this while so many others are like, oh, it's snowing like crazy outside. I can't make it to the gym today. Right. It's like, it's like the mountain's my gym, and I'm driving through snow that I'm almost getting stuck in just to get there so that I can go run in the same thing that my truck couldn't get through. And but in doing that, I've unlocked new levels. If we're talking video game analogy, it's like I found that secret turtle shell, and so I'm getting the extra lives, the extra power. And so when you're hunting and it does suck, because a lot of times it gets the bad weather, it's difficult, it's challenging, you mess up, or maybe the wind shifts and the elk blow out of there, and you work 3 days to get on this herd, and this is the bull you've been watching all summer, and all the things that just really build up that huge climax opportunity you've been waiting for, and then it falls apart. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been training all year for this moment. And, but then you learn, like, okay, it's not just about getting the elk that you can hang on your wall, that you can put in your freezer, and that you can enjoy on the Traeger. It's the experience you're having in that journey and finding joy in that journey. So that's what I told my son is, dude, actually, it's not just, it's like this whole process that I love. And this doesn't end here. When I go back home and shower up, or go sit in the hot tub, or try and relax, like, this is just, bullet 1.1 of like 1,000 to get to the goal that I want to put an elk in the freezer. And then when you put the elk in the freezer, every single one of those moments that sucked is like, oh yeah, baby, bring it on. And so now you're leaning into it. And again, you're craving it. You're looking for it. And so I think that analogy for life is that, life is, it's like, they say life is what happens when you're making other plans. It's like, that's the secret. It's like, that's what we're here for. We're here to learn and grow. And if I can accelerate that, like lifting heavier weights, if I can lean into that resistance and that difficulty and actually overcome it, I'm going to get so much stronger. And I don't need to take 3 months to get in shape. I could do what most people take 3 months to a year in a month.
Yeah.
Value stack that. Where could I get to? Yeah. And so I think it ties into hunting, life, being a dad, being a father, being a provider, like just leaning into all those things and figuring out how many uncomfortable conversations am I willing to have to get to that great place where, okay, now I'm on the sunny side of the hill and enjoying those warm rays.
Yeah. And there's something you really hit on there is kind of something I've been thinking through, the comfort discomfort paradox. Like, the more discomfort, the more hard the work, it's making the elk taste better. It's making that hot tub more relaxing.
It does.
It's like all the things that we lean into for comfort. It's the discomfort that makes this much better.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the other thing too. I think in the end, once you've done that, it's like, okay. And there are people, I mean, I've been on hunts where, my wife's uncle one time we were on this hunt out of town and camping and spotting trips and, like months of prep. And he killed this nice deer, and it was, and he stood over it after, and he's like, he looked like he didn't know quite what to do. And I'm like, this is awesome. And he's like, yeah. And he just kind of, and I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, he thought it was going to be better than this for him.
Oh, wow.
And I learned something, and I thought, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to, I can't even imagine having gotten a buck like this, of this quality, and, old deer and a great deer and awesome. But for him, I just don't think he enjoyed the journey.
Yeah.
And so the trophy was kind of empty. It was cool for a minute.
Yeah.
But once the adrenaline wears off, it's like, okay, now what,
Yeah.
But where I'm value stacking, and again, the high arching point I hope to make is that, hunting is just in my bones. It just speaks to me. It's something that I've always wanted to do. My dad did it a little bit, was a weekend guy, wasn't ever any good at it, didn't prepare, didn't any of the things that I try and do now.
Right.
I found those because I found that passion, but it's not just, I run to be healthy. I run to be in shape. I run to feel better. I run because I can listen to podcasts and learn while I'm running and working on my body and doing things that, not just music. I mean, I like that too, but 90% of everything I listen to is something I can learn from and be better. And so that's just what I choose. But that process is actually making me a better person and fulfilling me in other ways. So the hunting and that outdoor experience and getting that elk becomes maybe the reason that I pursue so hard and that I put this work in, but the joy comes in putting the work in. And so I'm being healthy of body, mind, and spirit. And I'm happy and I'm excited and I have something to look forward to. And so it's not just, like as a little kid, you're like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? You just can't wait to get I'm kind of that way with this lifestyle where, there's no finish line. The journey is the destination.
So,
it's not a place.
Yeah. And something about, I guess, our first world lifestyle. It's like, I can't wait to graduate college. Can't wait to get out of college, or can't wait to make this amount at this job and get here, have this house. And it's just we're like you say, we're continually putting finish lines, and then we're missing the entire journey and the joy because we're trying to move past the discomfort of the in-between of the journey. Yeah. So
that's true.
Man.
I was just going to say, I have like 78 credit hours in college, and I was getting a business degree with an emphasis in construction management. And I have like one semester left if I go take the but I was running my business on the side. I was building a family. I built a new home when I was 23. I did all the work on it. Like I was just so busy, like I couldn't, and something had to give. And I was like, that degree would be awesome. It's a goal. I still have a goal to get one. I don't need it. I'd like to do it because I said I was going to do it, and I started on it, so I want to finish it. But here I'm almost 50, and I haven't gone back for that last semester yet. And so maybe one day I'll pull a Shaquille O'Neal and go get the degree later after the million.
Right.
But anyway, this is kind of funny. So it's I think it's good not to put ourselves in that cookie cutter that society tells us, like, find your path and your passion and where you feel like you're at home and the thing that speaks to you, and you'll find the life lessons and the experience and the success that you deserve and that you need to feel that fulfillment.
It's great. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on. Where can my listeners find you?
Yeah, you could just find me on Instagram. It's just at Michael T. Merrill, all straight through, just my full name. And I'm on Twitter and Facebook and all that too. Usually post a lot on Instagram. And then our podcast is called the Mobile Workforce Podcast. It's on all the platforms. Our company social stuff is at WorkMax _ on Instagram. And, we like to help companies and contractors and businesses that have a need to track their production and the things that they're doing. So I love that fulfilling side of my life too. And that's where you'll find me.
Great. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, man. And it's been a blast talking to you.
All right, Cartwright. Thanks again. Appreciate it. And I look forward to catching up down the road.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Men Are Forged podcast. If you enjoyed this interview, I recommend going over to Men Are Forged YouTube page and subscribing. There's more great content, short clips, videos, even some full interviews of just more content about how we are shaping men into leaders. So you can go there to the Men Are Forged YouTube page and subscribe.